King's Landing was no place for honor, and Eddard Stark knew it better with every breath he took beneath its stifling southern heat. The city reeked of perfume, lies, and blood waiting to spill. He had debated, hesitated, but the gods had given him enough signs. The truth about Cersei Lannister and her children wasn't a secret anymore. It was a sword hanging over the realm, and he had no right to keep it sheathed. So on the morning of the second moon after his arrival in King's Landing, he went to Robert. The king sat on the Iron Throne, not his usual seat of comfort, but a mood of fury had overtaken him after a brief quarrel with Cersei. Ned found him alone, already drunk before midday, gnawing on a piece of boar meat, as if to bite through his rage. "Your Grace," Ned said, bowing, "we must speak." Robert squinted through the haze of wine. "About what? You've got that cursed northern look again. Has someone insulted your damned snow?" "No jokes this time," Ned replied, his voice low and firm. "It concerns the succession. It concerns your children." Robert blinked, then laughed. "Now what in seven hells? What has Joff done now? Beat another servant?" Ned stepped forward. "Joffrey is not your son." The words fell like a blade across the throne room. Robert stopped chewing, his face flushed with blood, eyes narrowing in disbelief, in warning. "Say that again, Ned, and say it carefully. None of your children are yours. They are Jaime Lannisters, all of them. Black of hair does not lie. Your son with Cersei should not be blonde." Silence fell between them, dense as fog. Robert's hands trembled, not with fear, but fury. He stood slowly, the bones in his knees cracking like dry wood. "You come to me with this? Now?" His voice was hoarse. "You accuse the Queen of adultery, of treason? My best friend accuses me of being a fool for 15 years? Ned didn't flinch. "I have proof. I spoke with Jon Arryn's squire before he died, and I visited Gendry, your bastard. He has your face, so do others, but not Joffrey." Robert grabbed a golden goblet from the armrest and flung it across the room. Wine splashed red on the stones like blood. "I'll kill them," he muttered. "By the gods, I'll kill them all." "No," Ned stepped forward. "You must think of the realm, of stability. There must be a proper trial. You must not act in anger." But Robert Baratheon was built of nothing but fire and vengeance. And now that fire had a name. Cersei. By nightfall, the Red Keep was in lockdown. The king summoned his small council, his voice booming like thunder through the halls. "My wife has betrayed me. My heir is no true Baratheon. The lions have played me for a fool." Pycelle turned pale. Littlefinger looked amused, but masked, it with a cough. Varys, of course, said nothing, but his eyes danced with calculations. Cersei was taken into custody before sunrise, clawing and spitting like a cornered lioness. Jaime was not in the keep. He had ridden out the day before, perhaps suspecting something, or perhaps too late to stop it. Joffrey had to be dragged from his chambers. The boy screamed, kicked, and threatened to have everyone beheaded. "I am the king!" he shrieked. "My father is the king!" But Robert didn't even look at him. "Your father is a dog in golden armor," he spat. The court went mad with whispers. The people flooded the streets. The queen imprisoned, the heir a bastard, the Kingslayer missing. It was too much for them to process. Fear crept in like winter's breath. In the north, ravens flew. In the Vale, in Dorne, in the Riverlands. The game had begun far earlier than it should have. And behind the walls of the Red Keep, in the dungeons below, Cersei sat alone, smiling, because she had always known that men like Robert burned fast. And burnouts, she once told Jaime, take everything around them when they die. The dungeons of the Red Keep had never known such venom as Cersei Lannister carried within her. She did not weep, nor did she plead. She sat upon the damp stone like a queen on a throne, golden hair tangled but chin lifted, every inch of her daring Robert to break her. The guards whispered that she smiled even when he came down himself to scream at her, his words slurred with drink but sharp with hate. "You've made me a fool before the whole realm," Robert bellowed. "A cuckold mocked in song and whisper. Do you know what they'll call me? Robert the Stag with horns sharp enough to kill him." Cersei leaned forward, her chains clinking. "Better a fool than a corpse. Do you think the realm will forgive you for locking up its queen? The Rock does not forgive. The Rock does not forget." Robert's fist struck her cheek. She fell back against the wall but laughed, blood trickling from her lip. "Strike me all you want, Robert. Every blow you give me will be answered 100-fold, when my father comes for you." That night, ravens flew to Casterly Rock. In the council chambers the air grew thicker than smoke. Varys warned that Tywin would not stand idle. Pycelle, trembling, urged Robert to forgive and cover the matter. Quietly. "For the realm, your grace, spare your wife, spare the children, spare us all." "Spare them?" Robert roared. "They are not mine to spare. I'll have their heads on spikes." Littlefinger, smirking in his corner, intervened softly. "If you kill the queen and her children without trial, the lions will roar in every corner of Westeros. Why not let them live? Lock them away. Let their shame rot them more than any sword." But Robert was a man who had never measured patience. His hand slammed the table. "The boy dies first. Let the world see the false stag stripped of his crown." Ned stood, his voice hard as northern ice. "No, I will not stand by while children are butchered. Whatever their birth, Joffrey and his siblings are innocent of their parents' sins." "Innocent," Robert snarled. "That golden-haired brat threatened my men, called himself king before my very eyes. He is the very image of Lannister. O pride, I'll not suffer it." Silence fell. The council scattered, each man calculating his survival. Meanwhile, Jaime Lannister was no fool. He had heard the whispers before the Raven even reached Casterly Rock. Riders spoke of the Queen's imprisonment and Joffrey's disgrace. Rage boiled through him, hotter than wildfire. He abandoned his post on the King's Road and turned south, with his men, knowing full well what awaited. "They dare lay hands on her," he told his sworn brothers. "They dare chain my sister in their dungeons." His hand clenched the reins so tightly the horse whinnied. "By the time I am done, there will be no dungeon left to hold her." And in Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister read the Raven with a face like carved granite. He said nothing for a long while. At last he stood, and his voice was colder than the wall. "They have dishonored my blood. They have insulted my house. They have forgotten who we are." The gold cloaks of King's Landing began to waver. Some had been bribed by Littlefinger, others still loyal to the crown, but many whispered of Lannister gold and the wrath to come. The city teetered like a cup filled to the brim, waiting for a single drop to spill. Robert drank more than ever. He called for Joffrey's head, for Cersei's public shaming, for Jaime to be hunted like a wolf. Ned counseled restraint at every turn, but restraint was a stranger in Robert's court. At last, Ned went to see Cersei himself in the dungeon. She sat cross-legged, her face still bruised, but her green eyes glittering with defiance. "You've doomed us all," Ned said quietly. "No, Stark," she whispered, leaning forward as the torches flickered. "You've doomed yourself. You think you've protected your honor, but you've only given my father a reason to burn the realm. Do you know what Tywin does when his kin are shamed? He burns cities, he slaughters children, he makes rivers red. And when he comes, he will start with your daughters." Ned froze. Her smile widened, and for the first time since he uncovered the truth, he wondered if exposing it had not been his gravest mistake. The city of King's Landing had always been loud, markets buzzing, gossip carried through alleyways, children running with bare feet across stone. But now the noise was darker. Whispers ran faster than the wind. The Queen imprisoned. The crown. Prince a bastard. The king drunk with fury. Each tale twisted sharper than the last. Commoners gathered at the taverns to argue who should rule, some calling for Robert's true-born bastards, others muttering the Targaryens should have never. been dethroned at all. Inside the Red Keep, Robert's rage burned hotter with every cup of wine. He demanded Joffrey dragged before him daily, and each time the boy spat curses, screaming for Jaime to come rescue him. "I'll have your heads when I am king," he shrieked at the guards, his voice breaking with boyish fury, but Robert only laughed, a harsh, cruel laugh. "King, you're no king, you're no son of mine." The council feared what would happen if Robert acted too swiftly. Pycelle begged for mercy. Littlefinger whispered of the power that could be gained if Joffrey lived as a puppet. Varys, silent for long stretches, finally murmured that the realm is watching, and the realm does not forgive kinslaying lightly. Yet Robert was deaf to them all. The blood of the stag demanded vengeance. Far away, Jaime's horse thundered over dirt roads. He rode with a handful of men, golden lions stitched into their cloaks, their blades eager for the blood of anyone who stood in their way. At night, by the campfire, Jaime said little. His face was carved with rage. "She will not break," he muttered once, staring into the flames. "Cersei has more steel than Robert ever will. But I'll cut through the whole city to get her out if I must." The others dared not question him. They knew the Kingslayer's love for his sister was no ordinary bond. It was a madness that fueled him, sharper than any sword. At Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister sat in the great hall, a golden lion looming behind him. His bannermen stood assembled, restless and ready. The old lion's voice was quiet, but each word was iron. "They have chained my daughter like a common whore. They threaten my grandson with death. They brand the Lannister name with shame before the whole realm. If the stag believes this insult will be forgotten, he is a greater fool than I thought." He looked over his gathered lords. "Summon the West, every sword, every rider. We march to war." And with that the lion stirred. Back in King's Landing, Ned Stark walked the halls of the Red Keep, the weight of guilt pressing down on him. He had believed the truth would set the realm right, that honor would be a shield. Yet everywhere he turned he saw fear in men's eyes, division in their words. The guards muttered about switching sides. The small folk already dreamed of rebellion. The king's madness grew by the day. At night he wrote letters to Winterfell, urging Catelyn to keep the children safe, though his heart twisted, knowing Sansa and Arya were still in the city. He found himself in the Godswood, the only quiet place left in King's Landing. The Hearttree's pale face watched him as he knelt. "Have I done right?" he whispered. "Have I doomed us all?" The silence gave no answer, only the rustle of leaves. On the 5th night after Cersei's imprisonment, a raven reached the Red Keep, its seal a golden lion. Robert tore it open with clumsy hands. His face reddened as he read the words aloud. "Release the Queen and her children at once, or know the wrath of House Lannister. The Rock does not forgive. The Rock does not forget. Signed, Tywin of House Lannister." Robert crumpled the parchment and threw it into the fire. "Let the old bastard come. I'll gut him myself." Ned watched the flames eat the lions. Seal and new war was no longer a threat. It was a certainty. That same night Varys found him walking alone. The eunuch's voice was soft as ever. "You have done a brave thing, my lord. But bravery is not always wisdom. The realm was a fragile glass. You struck it with a hammer. Do you hear it? The sound of shattering." Ned turned, his jaw set. The realm deserved the truth. Varys smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but truth is like wildfire, Lord Stark. Once lit, it cannot be contained." And somewhere beyond the city walls, Jaime Lannister crossed into the Crown Lands. His sword was ready. His heart burned with fury. The lions were coming. The gates of King's Landing groaned open at dawn, though no one had ordered them to. The Goldcloak's standing watch shifted uneasily as a small party of riders approached, dust rising in their wake. At the front rode Jaime Lannister, golden hair glinting like fire in the early sun. his armor polished as though he had come for a tourney rather than a siege. But his eyes betrayed him, sharp, unblinking, and filled with fury. "Open the gates," one guard stammered, and trembling on his spear, another hesitated. The king ordered no Lannister pass. Jaime's smile was cold, and yet, here I am. Before the second man could answer, Jaime's sword slid free with a hiss. The blade punched through the guard's throat. Blood sprayed against the stones. The others froze, then scattered, some dropping weapons, some running to raise the alarm. By the time bells rang, Jaime and his men were already inside the walls. The Kingslayer had returned. Robert was still half drunk when word reached him. He roared with laughter at the news. "The boy's come to save his sister? Good, let him come. I'll put him down like the dog he is." Ned, grim-faced, did not laugh. "If Jaime has entered the city, then he has men behind him. This is not a rescue, it is an invasion. We must secure the Red Keep." "Secure it?" Robert slammed his cup down. "I'll meet him myself." But his legs betrayed him when he stood, wobbling under his weight. Ned caught his arm before the king could topple. "You cannot fight drunk, Robert. You cannot fight reckless. If you die, the realm dies with you." Robert shoved him off, but said nothing more. For once, the great stag had no answer. In the streets, chaos boiled. Small folk screamed and scattered as steel clashed. Jaime's men cut through gold cloaks loyal to the crown, while other gold cloaks simply melted away, bought by Lannister. Coin, long before this day, red and gold clashed with black and gold, and the gutters began to run red. Through the smoke and blood, Jaime rode straight for the Red Keep. His white cloak flared behind him, stained with gore. The sight of him was enough to send some guards fleeing without a fight. At the gates of the keep itself, he was finally challenged. A dozen gold cloaks held their ground, spears leveled. Jaime reined in his horse, face hard as stone. "Stand aside," he said. "I've come for the queen." One brave sergeant stepped forward. "By order of the king, she is held for treason. Take one step further, and you'll die." Jaime's sword flashed. The sergeant's head rolled before his words had even finished. The rest broke instantly. Within the throne room, Ned stood with Robert as the shouts of battle echoed closer. The small council had gathered in fear, Pycelle blubbering, Varys silent, Littlefinger watching with sly delight. Robert seized his warhammer, his eyes blazing. "Let the Kingslayer come. I'll crush his skull the way I crushed Rhaegar's." But before he could storm out, the doors slammed open. A wounded guard stumbled in, blood pouring from his chest. "The Kingslayer is inside the keep," he gasped before collapsing. Ned drew his sword. "Robert, listen to me. We must get your bastards safe. Gendry, Maya, Edric, all of them are your true heirs. If you fall, the realm cannot have chaos." Robert shoved him back. "Don't speak to me of bastards now. I am Robert Baratheon, the rightful king, and I'll not cower while lions claw at my door." And then the throne room doors burst wide. Jaime Lannister strode in, golden armor shining, blood dripping from his blade. His men fanned out behind him. "Step aside, Stark," Jaime said, his voice as calm as if he were greeting an old friend. "I've come for my sister." Ned raised Ice, the great sword of Winterfell. His face was carved of stone. "You'll not leave this hall alive, Kingslayer." Robert stepped forward, warhammer in hand, his chest heaving with fury. "You wanted me, boy? Come take me." The hall shook with silence, the kind that comes just before thunder breaks. Then steel clashed. The Iron Throne loomed above them, a jagged beast of steel and shadow, as if it were watching the fight with hungry eyes. Robert gripped his warhammer, knuckles white, the veins in his neck bulging with fury. Ned stood a half-step to the side. Ice held steady, his northern calm a sharp contrast to Robert's fire. Across from them, Jaime Lannister smirked, though the smirk did not reach his eyes. His golden armor caught the torchlight, gleaming with both beauty and menace. "You should have stayed in the north, Stark," Jaime said, circling like a lion, stalking prey. King's Landing is no place for honor. And yet, Ned replied, his voice steady, honor is all that separates men from beasts. Robert barked a laugh, savage and raw. Enough words. Let's see how well the Kingslayer dances. Then he charged. The floor shuddered under the stag's fury. Robert's hammer swung like a storm, crashing against Jaime's sword with bone-splintering force. Sparks flew. Jaime was driven back 2 steps, but his smile returned as he twisted, turning Robert's rage aside with practiced grace. Steel rang out again and again. Robert swung heavy and wild, each blow a killing strike, each miss shaking the stone floor. Jaime moved like water, deflecting, sliding, always a breath out of reach. Ned did not join at first. He watched, measured, waited for Jaime's arrogance to blind him. And then the moment came. Jaime feinted, turning Robert's hammer aside, his sword darting for the king's unguarded flank. Ned stepped in, ice intercepting the blade with a crash that echoed through the hall. Now it was 2 against 1. The council cowered at the edges of the throne room. Pycelle whimpered, hiding behind a pillar. Littlefinger leaned against the wall, eyes glittering with amusement. Varys folded his hands, expression unreadable. Blood spattered the stones as Jaime cut Robert's arm, a shallow wound but enough to enrage the king further. Robert bellowed, swinging his hammer in a wide arc that nearly split the air itself. Jaime ducked, the hammer smashing into the iron throne behind him. Blades screeched, sparks leaping as steel upon steel cried out in protest. Ned pressed forward, driving ice in heavy arcs, forcing Jaime to defend. Jaime's smirk faltered now, his eyes narrowed, sweat beading his brow. He was the finest swordsman of his age, but against stark steel and Baratheon fury together, even the Kingslayer felt the weight. Yet Jaime was cunning. He danced back, letting Robert's rage tire him, letting Ned's honor keep him predictable. Then with sudden precision he lunged, his blade slicing across Robert's chest. Blood bloomed crimson. Robert roared but did not fall. He raised his hammer high, ready to smash Jaime's skull to dust. The throne room doors slammed again. Goldcloaks poured in, half wearing the stag's sigil, half already sworn to Lannister gold. Confusion exploded into chaos. Some rushed to protect the king, others to aid Jaime. Steel clashed, screams rose, and the chamber became a slaughterhouse. Ned shouted above the din, "Robert, fall back! The city is not ours!" But Robert would not retreat. He swung again, catching Jaime's shoulder, denting his golden plate. Jaime staggered, yet still grinned through bloodied teeth. "You fight like a boar, Robert," he panted, loud, furious, and in the end, easily slain. With a blur of motion, Jaime struck low, his blade cutting deep into Robert's thigh. The king bellowed, stumbling to one knee. The warhammer slipped from his grasp, crashing onto the stones with a thunderous clang. For the first time in years, Robert Baratheon looked vulnerable. Ned surged forward, ice raised high, shielding his king. Jaime's blade met stark steel. Once more, the 2 locking eyes, wolf and lion, death and defiance. Around them, men screamed and died, blood soaking the floor beneath the throne. The Iron Throne watched, its cold blades hungry for the victor. The throne room was a furnace of blood and steel. Goldcloaks hacked at one another without knowing who they truly fought for. Some swore by Robert's stag, others by the lion's gold, but most simply fought to live. The screams of dying men echoed against the cold blades of the Iron Throne until it seemed the chair itself fed on the chaos. At the center, Jaime and Ned clashed like storm against mountain. Ice swung in great deliberate arcs, forcing Jaime to yield ground. But the Kingslayer was quicker, sharper, his blade flashing like lightning. Every strike he landed rang across Ned's bones, every counter reminding him that this was no joust in Winterfell but a dance with death itself. Robert, bleeding from his chest and leg, dragged himself to his warhammer. His face was pale, his breaths ragged, Yet his eyes blazed with the fire of Robert the Usurper, the man who had slain Rhaegar Targaryen on the trident. With a roar, he swung the hammer in a desperate arc. It struck Jaime's side. The golden armor buckled with a sickening crunch, hurling him across the floor. He landed hard, gasping, blood spilling from his mouth. For the first time, the Kingslayer looked stunned. "Die, you golden bastard!" Robert bellowed, limping toward him, hammer raised. But Jaime was never without arrogance. Even on the ground, he smiled, blood staining his teeth. "Strike me. Down, Robert, and you'll doom your daughters. My men will see them torn apart before you draw your next breath." Robert hesitated. His hand trembled on the hammer's grip. His fury was boundless, but his love for his blood, even Sansa and Arya, hostages in this viper's nest, was the one leash that could check him. That heartbeat of hesitation was all Jaime needed. He rolled, blade flashing, cutting deep into Robert's calf. The king roared, collapsing onto one knee, hammer falling from his grip again. Ned charged to shield him, ice slamming down with a strike that nearly shattered Jaime's sword. Their eyes met, green against grey. "This ends now," Ned growled. Jaime's grin faltered, but only for an instant. "Then end it, Stark. Be the man who murdered the Queen's brother before half the realm." The throne room doors burst open again, not with more gold cloaks, but with the sound of horns, deep, booming horns that shook the very stones. Outside, the Red Keep, the banners of the Lion rose, thousands of them. A tide of crimson and gold flooded the horizon. Tywin Lannister had come. The news spread through the keep like wildfire. The West had arrived, and the Rock had brought its full strength. Panic seized the city, merchants barred their doors, small folk screamed of sack and slaughter. Those who had fought for Robert began to falter, while those who had secretly sworn for the Lions lifted their swords with renewed fury. The balance was gone. Varys slipped away into shadow, muttering that the game had turned sooner than it should. Pycelle wept openly, babbling that Robert must make peace. Littlefinger, however, smiled faintly, as though this chaos were the very song he had been waiting to hear. Ned looked from Robert, broken and bleeding, to Jaime, battered, but still grinning, to the Iron Throne itself, towering above them all. Honor had brought him here, truth had been his weapon, and yet the realm was shattering all the same. As the horns of House Lannister shook the air again, Jaime staggered to his feet, sword raised, and whispered to Ned, "Looks like the lion roars loudest after all." And outside, Tywin Lannister's army prepared to enter King's Landing. The horns of House Lannister did not stop. They blared through the day and into the night, a reminder that the lions were at the gates and the stag within was bleeding. King's Landing had been taken once before in fire and betrayal, and now the city trembled as it faced the same fate again. From the ramparts, Ned Stark looked out upon a sea of crimson banners, thousands of men-at-arms gleaming in polished armor, siege towers being rolled into place. The golden lion roared from every pennant, blotting out the stag's antlers and the seven-pointed star of the faith. Tywin Lannister had brought war to the heart of the realm, and this time it was not a Targaryen dragon he meant to slay, but a drunken, bleeding stag. Inside the Red Keep, Robert writhed upon a bed, his chest wound oozing and his legs swollen black. Maesters worked furiously, but their faces betrayed little hope. Robert Baratheon, once the thunder of the battlefield, was now a groaning giant, who could barely lift a cup. Cersei, still chained in the dungeons, whispered to her jailers. Some listened, some smirked. Many walked away with heavier purses than they had come with. And Jaime, battered but unbroken, sat in his cell as well, smiling as if this were all just a game waiting for the next move. The small council gathered in near panic. Pycelle demanded Robert bend the knee to Tywin and beg mercy. Littlefinger shrugged, noting that a Lannister king might not be such a bad outcome. Varys alone spoke with gravity. "If the city opens its gates, the lions will feast upon it. You all know Tywin's memory." The last time King's Landing displeased him, he sent in Gregor Clegane and Amory Lorch. Do you wish to see babes dashed against walls again? Ned slammed his hand upon the table. Then we fight. We have men enough to defend the Red Keep and the fleet in Blackwater Bay. We will not hand this city to a butcher. But already some lords shifted uneasily. Honor was a word for the north. In the south, survival ruled all. That night the gold cloaks turned, bribed, bought, or simply cowards. Half the city guard opened the gates to Tywin's army. The lions poured in. What followed was not battle, it was slaughter. The streets ran red as Lannister men-at-arms cut down gold cloaks who resisted, merchants who refused coin, and peasants who had nothing to give. Torches turned night into fire. The screams of women echoed as loudly as the clash of steel. Children fled into alleyways only to be dragged out again. For the second time in living memory, King's Landing was sacked. From the Red Keep, Ned heard the cries and knew the city was lost. His daughters were still within, Sansa dreaming of her golden prince, Arya lurking in shadows with her wolf's blood. He could not leave them to the lion's mercy. He burst into Robert's chambers. The king lay half-conscious, wine and blood staining his chest. His warhammer leaned useless by the bed. "Robert," Ned said, his voice urgent, "the city has fallen. We must flee. You and your bastards are the last hope for the Baratheon." "Line!" Robert's eyes flickered open. He tried to sit up but fell back with a grunt. "Flee! I do not flee, Ned. I am the king." "You are a man, Robert," Ned snapped, his patience breaking. "And men bleed. You cannot win this fight. If you stay, you die, and your house dies with you." Robert's eyes glazed with both pain and drink, but he managed a weak laugh. "Damn you, Stark. Always so cold, always so right." By dawn, fire devoured half the city. The Hound, Sandor Clegane, led bands of Lannister men through the streets, his sword red to the hilt. Sir Gregor rode with him, a mountain that cut down everything in his path. The gates of the Red Keep trembled under the ram. The lions were at the king's door. Inside, Ned gathered ice, Sansa clinging to his arm, Arya lurking with needle in hand, eyes wide but fierce. Robert lay upon his bed, his hammer across his chest, too weak to lift it, yet still whispering curses at the lions. "They'll not take me alive," he growled. "By the gods, I'll see the rock burn before I kneel." And outside, Tywin's horns blared once more. The old lion had come to claim his prize. The gates of the Red Keep shattered beneath the battering ram. Splinters flew like arrows, and then the lions poured through, banners snapping, swords gleaming, torches setting tapestries ablaze. The scream of steel and the roar of fire became one sound, the voice of the city dying. Tywin Lannister rode at the head, cold and unhurried. His golden armor shone untouched by blood, though behind him his men drowned the keep in it. His face was as expressionless as stone, but his eyes burned with that quiet, merciless fire that had made even Aerys Targaryen tremble. This was not a sack to him. It was justice, a lesson written in corpses. "Spare the throne room," he ordered. "Let Robert Baratheon see who truly rules." Within those black walls, Ned Stark braced himself before the Iron Throne. Sansa clung to him, sobbing, begging that Joffrey be spared, that he would save them. Arya stood further back, her little sword clutched in white knuckles, her face pale, but her jaw tight. Robert was propped against the throne itself, his warhammer across his knees, though he was too weak to raise it. He spat blood and wine in equal measure, his eyes still full of fire. When the doors flew open, the first to step inside was not Tywin, but Jaime Lannister, bruised and bloodied, yet smiling with that wolfish arrogance that no wound could kill. Behind him came his father, flanked by Sir Gregor and ranks of Lannister. Men. The lions had taken the hall. Robert coughed, his voice a rasp. So the lions crawled to their throne. "Come, Tywin, come and kill your king." Tywin regarded him for a long moment, his face unreadable. "You were never my king." He said coldly, "You were Robert Baratheon, drunk, reckless, and blind. My house suffers shame because of you. Today it ends." Jaime stepped forward, his sword gleaming, his smirk widened. "Shall I do the honors, father? Add another king to my name?" Robert roared weakly, trying to lift his hammer. It slipped from his hands, clattering on the stone. His strength was gone. His reign was over. Ned moved between them, ice raised high. His grey eyes burned like winter flame. "If you want him, you'll have to cut through me." Tywin's gaze slid to him. "And I will. You chose poorly, Stark. You put truth before peace. Do you see what your honor has bought? Fire, death, a realm at war." The Lannister men closed in, blades ready. At that moment, the dungeon doors opened, and Cersei Lannister entered. Her golden hair was loose, her gown torn, her wrists still red from chains, but her head was high. She walked past the corpses, past the smoke, straight to the center of the hall. The men parted for her, unsure whether to kneel or flee. "Father," she said, her voice ringing sharp as a bell, "this is not how it ends." Tywin's brows arched. "Explain." Cersei's green eyes gleamed. She turned, pointing to Robert, broken on the floor. "Kill him, and you make him a martyr. The realm will rally to the stag. Better to leave him breathing, rotting in his weakness. Let the people see what their king truly is, a fat drunk who could not protect even his own children." She shifted, her gaze to Sansa and Arya. "And let the wolf's pups live as well, as hostages. Stark blood bends the north. Baratheon blood bends the Stormlands. With both in our grasp, the realm is ours, without a single crown needing forged anew." For the first time, Tywin paused. His daughter's words were poison and honey both. Jaime frowned, his hand tightening on his sword. "You'd leave them alive?" "Yes," Cersei purred. "Alive, but never free. Let them watch as lions rule the world they thought was theirs." Ned's stomach turned to ice. He saw his daughter's pale faces, their terror, and knew Cersei spoke truth. Honor had failed him. Truth had doomed them. And now the only thing left was survival. Tywin finally nodded, his voice calm. "So be it. Robert Baratheon lives in chains. His daughters too. The wolf and the stag will kneel, whether they wish it or not." Cersei smiled, triumphant even in ruin. "And the lion will wear the crown." Jaime lifted his head, his smirk returning. "Then let it be Joffrey, bastard or not. He will sit the throne. He will be king, and the realm will learn to love him, or burn for refusing." The Iron Throne loomed above them, sharp and cruel, as Tywin stepped closer. His voice carried through the hall like a death knell. "From this day forth, the 7 kingdoms belong to House Lannister." Robert closed his eyes, a broken king on his knees. Ned lowered ice, his daughters clinging to him, the weight of his failure heavier than the greatsword in his hand. And, high above, the throne of 1,000 blades seemed to laugh, its jagged edges glinting in firelight, a monument not to kings, but to liars, butchers, and lions who knew no shame.